Hello and welcome to Dialogue. Since its launch in 2013, the Belt and Road Initiative has been playing a huge role in facilitating global trade, investment, and financial integration. Spanning more than 150 countries, it is the first infrastructure initiative in history that is joined by about 70% of the world's population, covering more than half of the global GDP. Egypt, being one of the first countries to join the BRI, witnessed remarkable progress made in the past decade. What changes had the BRI brought to Egypt, the Arab states, and the Middle East and the world? How could the initiative better serve the development rights of more countries and reach its ultimate goal of building a global community of a shared future? To discuss these issues and more, I'm delighted to be joined by Nabil Fahmy, former Foreign Minister of Egypt. He's also a visiting senior fellow at the Institute for Global Cooperation and Understanding of Peking University. That's our topic. I'm Xu Qinduo. Welcome to Dialogue, Minister Fahmy.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's been 10 years since the start of the Belt and Road Initiative. We know that more than 150 countries have signed up to the initiative, and Egypt, where you are from, is one of the signatory countries to the initiative. So I want to have your assessment of the past development during the 10 years period of time of the initiative.
Well, I would argue it's a considerable success. It was a major project involving, as you mentioned, over 150 countries, and it focuses on developmental issues. Consequently, it takes time. But the mere fact that it has gotten so many countries on board, and where one has seen a significant growth rate in the majority of these countries, besides the growth of bilateral trade and development between China and many of these countries, I look at it as a tremendous success. It's been so successful, it has generated a level of competition among, if you want, the Western world in particular, but also other parts of the world. So I'm all on board for the project. At the same time, each one of us has to look at the details of the project from their own perspective, with the objective of having a win-win situation.
Yeah, a win-win situation. I think that's the goal or the principle the initiative follows. And of course, this Belt and Road Initiative also aligns with Egypt's own strategic development plan, which is called Egypt's Vision 2030. Tell us more on that. How do these two initiatives align with each other?
Sure. First of all, for different reasons, Egypt was a little bit slow in developing its infrastructural capacity over the last 3 or 4 decades. And we were falling behind, even though we had one of the strongest and largest infrastructural legs, which was the Suez Canal. The Program 2030 was, besides a program meant to increase development, it was also a program that gave strong priority to building infrastructural capacity. The reason for that being, we look at Egypt as being strategically located and consequently very good position to be a hub for commodity trading, a hub for grain trading, a hub for energy cooperation, and all of that fell and was very consistent with the Belt and Road Initiative in trying to upscale the capacity of the Suez Canal, upscale the industrial zones around it, including a cooperation zone with China. All of this came very consistent with Belt and Road and 2030 on the Egyptian side.
Mm-hmm. Speak of the zone, Minister, there's a TADA cooperation zone in Egypt's Suez. which has been seen as a model of cooperation between China and Egypt under the BRI. So we have seen that more than 145 countries enterprises have invested in this zone with the creation, of course, thousands or tens of thousands of opportunities for employment. Even what is impressive, even during the 3 years of COVID-19, 90% of the businesses in the zone, they have achieved profits. Tell us, how is the zone like? How does it work? What does it mean? How does it fit in the economic development of Egypt?
Well, let me tell you even a personal story. When I was minister in 2013, 14, one of the complaints that I received from the Chinese at the time was that Egypt was a bit slow in completing the infrastructure for that zone, and that Chinese companies were already starting their investment. We immediately started to correct that mistake, to quickly finish the infrastructure, and I must say the Chinese enthusiasm to join the zone only increased day after day. It's a reflection of an area built on mutual benefit. It's not meant to profit one side versus the other. It is meant to be mutually beneficial, and it's meant to be a strategic commitment rather than a tactical one. It's not a trade, it's an investment. We are very, very happy to see the diversification of Chinese companies in the zone, and they cover a lot of different disciplines, from infrastructure to industrial products, IT. They're all there. We have created a special facility to help the companies there resolve and overcome any procedural steps, to help them really undertake an investment in the market, in the Egyptian market, which is considerable of size in comparison to other Middle Eastern markets. But it's also a zone that is a platform for cooperation between China and Egypt, but also between China and a number of East African countries, as well as, frankly, even exports into Europe because of our economic zones with these areas. It's a model that we're trying to emulate with other countries now.
Mm-hmm. Well, Minister, do you mind tell us more about the advantages or the strength of investing in Egypt? We see, as you said, the enthusiasm from the Chinese business community to invest in your country, not only for the sizable market in Egypt itself, but also beyond Egypt, right?
Sure. I mean, the economic strength is that you have both a good domestic market for your products, but also a good export market for the products. The particular attractiveness of the zone is that it's on the Suez Canal area, therefore easy access in, easy access out for production elements that are required, or for the ultimate product as it's finished. And I would add, thirdly, the regulations organizing the zone have been considerably simplified, with one-stop shopping, so that companies can go to a very limited number of venues to resolve any of their requirements. So it's not only that there are tax incentives, and there are, for companies building in these zones, but it's also that we are really making this a business-to-business area and trying to facilitate cooperation. And I think we've succeeded, just looking at the number of Chinese companies that have come in.
Mm-hmm. Well, Minister, some would say the biggest, or one of the biggest advantages of Egypt is its trade agreements with other African states, basically about 26 African countries with the free trade agreement. So that means, there's no trade barriers or customs in terms of the transfer of goods and services. So how is your country making good use of that advantage?
That's definitely one of the advantages. And I mentioned in my previous answer, the East Africa agreement with COMESA is one of the things that you're mentioning. I would even add to that, the Egyptian agreement with Europe allows us to export to Europe products that are produced in Egypt over and above a certain percentage. So there are, and there is also ongoing progress towards doing the same with Arab countries. Egypt has a well-trained labor force that is relatively efficient, and relatively inexpensive. Its location reduces the cost of transport very significantly from the zone to Africa, Asia, and West Asia, and to Europe. And its location on the Suez Canal makes it also attractive logistically. So this is really a model that we like to show and are proud of when we talk to other areas, to other countries, and try to emulate similar projects. And I want to emphasize that this has been, we are very happy to see the progress in job creation in particular, be that jobs on the ground, in the zone, but also the spin-off industries that build on these kinds of zones.
Yeah, indeed. There is a number saying that the Chinese investments have created roughly 24,000 job opportunities in the country. And staying on the cooperation between China and Egypt, Minister,
I can tell you they are very significant. The number of jobs are significant, and they are witnessable. Let me also say that China now is, if I'm not mistaken, Egypt's largest investment partner because of projects like TIDA and because of the direction in which we're all going. So this is a success story on both sides.
Yes, investment and also cooperation in different sectors. Minister, we know that China is a leading member in terms of the renewable energies, technologies, as well as equipment manufacturing, such as the solar power equipment. And if you look at the EVs also, there's a strong competition, very competitive for the Chinese EVs too. What do you see as a prospect of cooperation in this sector between China and Egypt?
I actually see this as being one of the most progressive and one of the sectors with most potential. We are trying to very quickly move more and more towards clean energy. And therefore, we're in consultations with China on EVs, for one example. We're already doing projects with China on solar panels and solar farms. As you know, Egypt has the luxury of being sunny most of the part of most of the time of the year, and we also have wind farms. So we will expand cooperation in this area in particular because, again, it serves interests on both sides.
Yes, something beyond the specific cooperation. There are reports that the Egyptian side is seriously considering the use of the local currencies of its trade partners, including that of the Chinese currency we call yuan, and of course Egyptian pound, to reduce the reliance or demand for the US dollars. What do you make of that?
Well, let me respond by reminding people, China is about 5,000 years old. Egypt is about 7,000 years old. Trade in the past was barter. It was products for products. It wasn't actually done through currencies. Currencies are a contemporary development, and over time, the US dollar became the currency for most trade operations. So going back to barter agreements is nothing really new. It's a normal. And trying to diversify the currencies in which a trade occurs also makes sense. I say this while recognizing that the dollar will continue for a considerable amount of time to be quite significant. But if I am trading products with China and China with Egypt, why is it that we would have to factor in our calculations a third currency? It doesn't make sense. The real health of our trade is when we can develop a good trade balance between the two countries, irrespective of the currency per se. But yes, to answer your question, as Egypt can diversify the currencies in which it trades with different countries, it reduces a little bit the pressure domestically here to find dollars for import reasons for other products. So I'm all for this. I'm not surprised by what's happened between the two countries, but I'm also realistic that we will continue to trade in dollars with countries that do that. But trading in multi-currencies is helpful because it makes us all less dependent on one factor.
Mm-hmm. Minister, do you see that as a trend, more or less, especially for developing countries? There are different considerations. Some countries would say they want to evade any potential or possible U.S. sanctions, because of their reliance on U.S. dollars and the financial markets. Others would say, by trading or clearing the trade directly with the local currencies, you reduce the cost of changing into U.S. dollars with your own currency. And of course, they say with the interest rates increase in the U.S., for example, it also creates extra burden for developing countries to pay their foreign debt. So they say, maybe diversification is the choice.
As a former foreign minister, I'm known to have always emphasized the importance of diversification in whatever domain we're talking about, well beyond the currency issue. So yes, I'm all for diversification. Secondly, I don't want to make this issue simply to be an issue to relieve countries from U.S. sanctions. I don't support unilateral sanctions by any standard or any account anyway. But I support diversification because it makes economic sense, because it makes the trade more inexpensive, and it makes it, if you want, less costly. But I also want to argue that the health of your economy is on how efficient the economy is, not necessarily on how many currencies you use or not. So my long answer to you is I'm all for diversity. I'm all for using multi-currencies, but I'm not going to argue that the solution to all of our problems is changing the dollar into other currencies. That's only part of the issue.
Yeah, part of the issue. Minister, let's look at the big picture between China and the Middle East region, let's say, or Arab world. Say China has signed the BRI cooperation documents with 21 Arab countries and the Arab League. China is now the largest trading partner of the Arab states, with last year's trade volume almost doubling that in 2012 to 431 billion US dollars in 2022. Basically, in 10 years' time, the trade volume grew 2 times that of the previous volume. What do you make of that? How do you see this rapid development of trade between China and Arab states?
First of all, I think it's completely common sense. Secondly, let me add that because it's common sense, because it serves the interests of both sides. Let me add that I was asked recently on an interview with a Western journal if I thought that China was coming to the Middle East. And my answer was no, it's already there. And I also argued that one of the reasons why the curve, as you mentioned, is moving upwards at a rapid pace, because the parties, be they China or the Arab world, understand and respect each other. Your president visited an Arab summit in Riyadh last year, I believe, and at that summit, or at the end of it, there were agreements worth about $30 billion that commitments were made on. But the number didn't really affect me that much. It was the commonality of the language, shared projects, mutual respect, looking for win-win situations. That's really what is pushing this curve. Now, is the attractiveness in relation to Chinese energy interest? Partially. It's also a function of China looking for markets for products. But I would argue from the Arab side, China is extremely attractive as an investment partner. It's an attractive as a trade partner, whether it is to get high quality goods at reasonable prices, or to develop industries that are with joint mutual commitment. So I see this as a logical curve that will go higher and higher, because it's done on a strategic basis with a win-win mentality, rather than on, if you want, a transactional basis where most of the profit goes to one end.
Mm-hmm. Minister, you were asked by a Western journal, is China coming to the Middle East? Does that mean, there's a concern from the West that China's increased presence in the region?
There's not a concern, there's a paranoia.
Where is that from?
Yeah. The West likes to talk about free markets, but they don't like competition. The West likes to talk about investment and trade, likes to talk about the Middle East needing to solve its own problems. But when we reach out and look for solutions elsewhere, they become hypersensitive, because China is an efficient, strong force to be reckoned with. And it is, depending on how you want to calculate it, either the first or the second largest economy in the world. So that raises concerns in the West. My response to my Western colleagues has been repeatedly that I'm not pro-West, nor am I pro-East or pro-China. I'm pro-Egypt. And therefore, I will do what serves Egypt's interest. And Egypt's interest is in diversification. And it's in diversification with partners that mutually respect each other and that look for a win-win situation. And we have found that in the Chinese partners, in the Chinese companies. It hasn't always been easy, but overwhelmingly, the experience has been quite positive.
Mm-hmm. Speak of the concern, with the rise of China or the rise of the rest using their language. We do see, for example, the expansion of BRICS countries recently, and Egypt was among one of the 6 new members to the BRICS group. Tell us, Minister, what does it mean, the new membership to Egypt?
Well, first of all, Egypt traditionally has been a leader in trying to help evolve the world order. So I look at BRICS as a constructive platform to help develop the world order, among other platforms, because we no longer live in the post-World War II era and the divisions between Warsaw Pact and NATO and East and West in that context. Secondly, I actually believe that BRICS opens the door for us for more efficient economic cooperation with these members as well as with other members. And we are in a rapid development era for Egypt. Look, we have a increasing population. We have growth demands that require us to spend a lot of money, and it also requires us to deal with our economy efficiently. So BRICS provides us another opportunity to work with friendly countries in that respect.
Mm-hmm. With the rise of the major developing countries, I would say represented probably by the BRICS countries, previously China, Egypt, China, India, Russia, South Africa, of course, Brazil, and now we have Egypt, Argentina, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. So how do you see the impact or the potential impact of BRICS grouping on this forming of maybe a new global structure?
The tendency to create new global structures actually was started by the major powers post-World War II. As the UN grew, they felt that it was much more difficult to manage. Therefore, let's establish the G20, the G7, and you name it, and there were all these different kinds of structures, which originally were named as economic structures, but also went on to have a geopolitical structure as well. So that's something that was started mostly by the developed world to create structures like BRICS. The idea was to help and add an economic voice of cooperation. This was not meant to be anti-anybody. It was essentially meant to help strengthen the economic voice of these countries in the larger context of what's happening around the world. And I still believe that to be the case. The most recent BRICS meeting, there was a lot of rumors that efforts were being made to take a position against this or against that. And the BRICS leaders themselves issued statements saying this is a constructive group meant to enhance the world order. It's not meant to polarize or combat one area or the other. So I look at this as a positive development. I don't believe in the short term it will replace any of the existing institutions, the economic institutions like the Bretton Woods institutions. But I do believe that in cooperation and consultations with each other, it strengthens our common position in many of these institutions.
Thank you, Minister Fahmy. Thank you for speaking with us. With that, we come to the end of today's show. Many thanks to our guest, Minister Nabil Fahmy. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.